The Nintendo GameCube, one of Nintendo's most underrated consoles. Is it worth having one in 2025? The GameCube is arguably Nintendo's most underrated game console. Now, some people are going to jump in the comments and say, Cha-Cha, the Wii U is Nintendo's most underrated console, and I'm going to disagree heavily. Maybe from a hardware standpoint, because you can do some really interesting stuff with the Wii U today, but the games library is pretty lackluster, mostly because the entire games library is pretty much out on the Switch at this point. There isn't a lot of motivation to go out and get yourself a Wii U. The other crowd is going to come in and tell me that the N64 is the most underrated Nintendo console, which I'm going to call BS on it. I think nostalgia has done a lot for the N64, because I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to get me flamed in the comments, but the N64 had about 20 good games, and then a lot of mediocre garbage. I'm just being honest. Most of the good games came out on the PlayStation 1 in that generation. Outside of the stellar first-party titles that made it onto the N64, it was mostly crap. And sorry, Nintendo nerds, you're going to have to attack me for it.
Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer.
The GameCube, on the other hand, was the perfect blend of an incredible games library, awesome peripherals, and at the end of the day, everything about the GameCube was just fun. That's how I can describe it. It was a fun console. It just felt like everything about the GameCube was just geared towards having fun. From that whimsical opening logo
that don't sound right. Oh.
To the goofy but really functional controller layout, to some of the best peripherals of the generation. I mean, the Game Boy player is still one of the best gaming console peripherals that I can think of. I remember having this and being able to play Metroid Fusion in my living room on my TV, and I was just blown away at the time. And it's still probably one of the best ways to consoleize your old Game Boy games. Because at the end of the day, fun fact, this is just a Game Boy Advance packaged in a shell that is compatible with the GameCube. Also, we gotta talk about how these little discs were just adorable. Aww. Not very functional and kind of a dumb move by Nintendo in the long run. However, you can't argue that they weren't just like the most adorable little things. I don't really do physical media anymore because I've modded all my consoles, but I do happen to have a couple random off games. All-Star Baseball 2002. No idea why I have that. Real quick, before anybody comes rushing to the comments to defend this disc copy of All-Star Baseball 2002, this disc was already screwed. I'm not a monster, guys. I don't just wreck discs just because. Damn it. Unfortunately, none of that really translated to a ton of commercial success for Nintendo in this era. Now, it did well enough. Obviously, Nintendo's still going strong to this day, but the PS2 absolutely dominated every other game console in this generation. Like, it wasn't even close. The PS2 is still the highest-selling game console of all time. The Xbox did pretty well as well, being adopted so heavily by third-party developers because at the time, the Xbox was just a beast of a machine. Part of the reason Nintendo had such a misstep in this generation was partly because of the adoption of the mini DVDs. They just had such a disdain for third-party developers. These mini DVDs really limited what could be done. They only had a 1.4 gigabyte capacity. I believe that's the number. I might be off on that. This isn't a channel that's all about facts and stuff. But standard DVDs could hold a lot more memory, meaning third-party developers could get a lot more content onto those DVDs. And in order to release those same games on the GameCube, you usually had to do 1, 2, possibly even 3 discs, which you could just accomplish in one disc on the PS2 and the Xbox. So naturally, third-party developers kind of shied away from the GameCube, which hurt it in the long run. Now, I didn't make this video so that I could do a long-winded GameCube history lesson. There's plenty of those available on YouTube from probably smarter people than me. I want to explore whether or not this technology is worth having in 2025. Do you need to source original GameCube hardware to get the optimal GameCube experience? I'm going to say that the games themselves are absolutely stellar, and this isn't reflective of the games library at all. We are looking at the hardware and answering a couple questions. 1, is it easy to source GameCube hardware? 2, how well does that hardware hold up? Is it durable? 3, how easy is it to modify a GameCube? I love to modify consoles. And then 4, physical games, if that's the route you want to go. How hard are they to get hold of? How expensive are they? How much are you going to get ripped off trying to play a physical GameCube game in 2025? So let's explore those things and see if this hardware is worth having. Answering question 1, is it easy to get a hold of a GameCube console? The answer is, without a doubt, yes. Now, while it wasn't the most commercially successful console of that generation, they still sold millions of these things. It's not that hard to get a hold of one. I went on eBay. You can easily source a decent quality one for $50 to $100. Don't buy one from like one of those retailers like DK Oldies. Jesus Christ, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for that thing. I would recommend just finding a good used one for $50 to $100. And that brings us into question 2. Are they durable? If Nintendo's known for one thing, it was creating game consoles that'll probably live past the heat death of the universe. The GameCube is just freaking durable, man.
Test 3. The demon drop. It's a long, long way down. The strongest one survived.
I have sourced many secondhand GameCubes, and they've shown up dusty as hell, dirty as hell, but still functioning. Just needed a good dusting, replace some thermal pads. But yeah, these things are just tanks. I mean, I have a feeling I could have launched this against the wall in my basement down here, and it would still power on just fine. To answer question number 3, can we modify the GameCube? And my answer to that question is water wet, is the Pope Catholic. Of course we can modify the GameCube. We can modify pretty much every retro console these days. The modding scene has just exploded in the last 10 years. The GameCube has particularly a lot of options, especially when it comes to the optical drive emulators. Most consoles have maybe 1 or 2 options for that. The GameCube has 3. You probably heard of a Pico boot, which requires some soldering knowledge, but if you know your way around a soldering iron, that's definitely the cheapest optical drive emulator you can get, and it spares your optical drive. So if you have extensive physical media, you can still utilize that on your GameCube while also having the ability to boot games off of an SD card. There's also the GC Loader, which is from a company called Black Dog Technology. Allows you to boot your games off of an SD card, but does require removing the optical drive. Like I said, I could care less about physical media. At this point in my life, I'm not a big collector like that, so it didn't really bother me to get rid of the optical drive. If you really don't want to get rid of the optical drive, but you don't know anything about soldering, and you don't want to pay someone else to solder your GameCube, your precious GameCube. Precious! The most recent development in the optical drive emulation space for the GameCube is the Flippy Drive. I mean, that thing is freaking awesome. It's cheaper than a GC Loader, a little bit more expensive than a Pico boot, but it allows you to do the same thing, boot games off of an SD card, and still spares your optical drive. Really incredible the advancements we've seen in GameCube modding. We can also add an HDMI port down here if you so choose. That is soldering intensive. So if you're not experienced with a soldering iron, I don't recommend that mod, but you can source this out to a multitude of different companies. You can find someone on eBay or Etsy who will do it for you. Tons of options out there. You can also replace the power supply with a more modern power supply. My GameCube has a USB-C port there so that I can charge this thing with a standard USB-C cable, and a power supply like an iPhone fast charger is good enough to get this thing operating. You can replace the fan in here. You can replace the shell. You can add Bluetooth compatible controller ports here. This is actually from Laser Bear Technology, this one in here, and it allows me to utilize any Bluetooth controller that I really want on my GameCube. Another company I really like that's doing amazing work in the retro game space is called Retro Fighter. So if you don't want to install Bluetooth receivers in your GameCube, or you don't like the idea of using a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X controller on your GameCube, might I recommend the Retro Fighter GameCube controllers. So you notice 2 different styles here. This controller is more like a traditional GameCube or Xbox controller. This one's more like a PlayStation controller with the joysticks down here at the bottom. Retro Fighters makes awesome modernized controllers that keep the spirit of the original controller alive. So you can see the button layout is still the GameCube style, but it's just in a more modern, sleek package. I absolutely love these things. They're super responsive. I really, really recommend this brand. So there's just an option for every taste, I would say, with the GameCube these days. It's one of the most heavily modified consoles out there. So to answer question 3, can we mod the GameCube? Abso-frickin-lutely we can. And that's not even mentioning all the cosmetic upgrades you can do to a GameCube. You can pretty much put any shell you can think of on this GameCube. They're all available out there. Different colors, different styles, translucent, solid, whatever you can imagine. There's even shell replacements for the frickin' Game Boy Player shell. So if you want translucent purple GameCube and a translucent purple Game Boy Player, by God, there's nothing stopping you in 2025, except maybe some tariffs. But, you know, this isn't a political channel, damn it. Question 4. What was question 4? This is why I should script these things instead of just rambling. Oh! Physical games. Is it worth it to get physical games for the GameCube? And a lot of people probably aren't going to like this answer. But hell to the no, it's not worth it. Who the hell wants to pay $50, $60, $70 for Super Mario frickin' Sunshine? Didn't that come with the GameCube? Shouldn't there be like millions of them out there? Whatever. I'm not going on a rant about the secondary, used game market. Whatever. It's bullshit. Here's the thing. Unless you are a collector, unless you really, really want to line your shelves with those beautiful game boxes and have those conversation pieces when people come over because you're a connoisseur of gaming, I really wouldn't say it's worth it. Mostly because, we have this ability to do game backups now on SD cards and play them that way.
Hi, this is Chow Chow Retro muting this audio here because we don't actually condone piracy on this channel, mostly because we're afraid of Big Daddy Nintendo and what they'll do to my family. We now return you to your regularly scheduled audio.
I'm not advocating piracy, but
It is immoral and wrong.
We should probably talk about homebrew applications once you actually modify this thing. There's Swiss, which I think most people know about. It's the UI you would utilize to actually open your games off of an SD card. There's a newer one called QBoot, which is for the flippy drive. I'm unsure if it works for the GC loader. I have to be honest, my philosophy in general is if it's not broke, don't fix it, and Swiss works beautifully on this thing, so I haven't felt the need to go in and tweak with anything. There's another one, GBI. GBI is a really important thing. So the Game Boy Player, the hardware itself, isn't that hard to get a hold of. I spent $40 or $50 for this. The disc, though, it doesn't work without the Game Boy Player disc. The problem is the disc is freaking ridiculous to get a hold of. It's like $100 to $200 for that disc. You can go to hell. I don't want to play Game Boy games on my TV that bad. And I'm going to be honest, my PC can emulate everything on the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance, whatever. But with GBI, you don't need that disc anymore. So I just boot GBI through Swiss, the Game Boy interface, and then I'm able to use the Game Boy Player just like I would if the Game Boy disc were in there. Game Boy Player disc, I should say. And it has more options as well. A lot more tweaking that you can do to make it look better on your TV. So arguably, it's a better version of the Game Boy Player for way less money. You can also do emulation up to a certain point. I gotta be honest, I don't know why you would really get a GameCube for emulation other than the novelty of being able to play, NES on it.
Hi, Chow Chow Retro pausing the audio again here just to let you know that playing pirated games even through emulation is still illegal and immoral. Did I say the right thing? Can I get my family back now?
So let's answer the question, is it worth getting GameCube hardware in 2025? The answer is a resounding, it depends. Whoa, I can't believe I just sat through a whole 15-20 minute video just for you to tell me it depends. Well, here's what it depends on. If you're like me, if you like having all this crap behind you just to have on a display mantle, hell yeah, it's worth it. This thing's awesome. I love it. It's one of my favorite consoles to own. But if you're just casually interested in playing the GameCube library, no, this was a lot of work and time and money to sink into this to make all this a reality. And here's the thing, the GameCube isn't even the best version of the GameCube. I mean, bam, that's the best GameCube right here, the Nintendo Wii, especially the Family Edition one with the ports and the memory card slots. It has everything inside of the Wii to be a GameCube. It's fully backwards compatible. It's not just emulation. And I mean, soft modding a Wii is super freaking easy. You can soft mod a Wii in 20 minutes with that SD card. I mean, you can boot the Wii and GameCube games off of it. Nintendo has really opened this thing up. I mean, the Wii is just a superior GameCube, and it's so much easier to get a hold of a Wii. I mean, I could buy 10 Wiis for $100. And just like the durability question with the GameCube, the Wiis are just going to outlive us all. And the fact if I bought 10 for-sale or 4-part Wiis, 7 of them would probably work. That's the usual ratio with Wiis. And one more thing, the Wii U. If you happen to have one laying around, or you want something that can play Wii U, Wii, and GameCube, the Wii U is also a fantastic GameCube. The Wii U has the Wii on there, Virtual Wii, and if you jailbreak that Virtual Wii, you can essentially kind of flip on the GameCube backwards compatibility with Nintendo, and you can play GameCube games on your Wii U. And with a little bit more work, you can even be able to play them on the gamepad itself. It's kind of convoluted to make it happen, but it is pretty cool when you do make it happen. There's also emulation. You can emulate GameCube games very effectively with Dolphin Emulator on most modern PCs. The phone in your pocket can probably emulate GameCube games to some degree of success. There's so many emulation devices out there that can emulate.
Hi, Reggie from Nintendo here. Just wanted to let you know we've had a lot of fun here today, but one thing that's not fun is pirating games. Just remember, if you pirate our games, we know where you live, we know where you work, we know where your family is. So for your own enjoyment and safety, pre-order yourself the Switch 2, available now.
The Switch. You can play GameCube games on the Switch these days, though you have to pay for it because Nintendo. But yeah, cheapest, most affordable way to play on original hardware is actually the Wii. The GameCube itself is for people that want to have it on their shelf. They want the challenge of modifying it. They just want to play on the OG console. But other than that, other than for the enthusiast, I can't say that the OG GameCube hardware is really worth having. But, if you disagree, if you want to fight with me in the comments, go ahead, have at it.